Thanks for being here. I know that the end of the semester is always very busy, so I really appreciate that you came. Thank you very much. We are going to start the third edition of the ECO-SOS Doctorials that, as you probably know, is an activity designed to help our PhD students to present their works in process for their doctoral thesis. Today, we will start with one presentation where Oscar Macaya, our PhD student, will explain the idea of a chapter in process of his thesis. After that, we will have three more standard presentations where three more students will explain a chapter of his thesis with more details. You know that we have short and long presentations, so we will have one of the short ones and three more long presentations. As we have been doing in the last sessions, in all the presentations we will have a senior professor assigned to each talk to make a short comment or question about the presentation in order to help more the students. After that, we will have a short break with a coffee outside where we can talk a little bit together. And to finish, we will have a presentation of Professor Nektarios Aslanidis, Senior Professor Researcher of the ECO-SOS Center. So thank you very much again, and we will start with Oscar Macaya. Thank you very much for being here, Oscar. You can start.
Gracias al micro. ¿Por qué? ¿Tú quieres aquí?
Sí.
Ah, pues mira,
¿Aquí? Sí. Good morning. It's a pleasure to show all of you our research. I am Oscar Macaya. I'm the second year of my PhD, which is about the central bank transparency. My supervisors are Carolina Manzano and Montserrat Ferrer. This is an index to structure my exposition. First we start explaining the research motivation. After that we explain the new paradigm and finally conclude to show what happens if we introduce the fiscal policy in the current context. Well, I think it's important to start talking a little bit about the motivation because we will understand better what I'm going to comment later. The first issue is to remark the importance of the central bank in our society. I think it's a necessary step because it's an item we are focused on. We know how can it impact in our life, changes the macroeconomic data like inflation and output, but we won't know how the repercussion is. The second one is the aim of the research is to introduce the fiscal policy in the current context. In our research to find the answer, what is the best situation of macroeconomic data, we just only find in academic literature based in monetary policy. But we think this outcome is a ground outcome because they don't take into account the fiscal policy. Well, the central bank has undergone a remarkable change. The new paradigm in monetary policy it appears to be the independent central bank and the transparency central bank. And also the importance of independent central bank has long been recognized in academic literature, and research in favor of transparency central bank is largely seen a response a new best practice of the central bank. During the 90s, the move toward a greater independent central bank brought an important change of the communication on that, of the information on that policy objective. While previously the central bank would provide a relative information or make impressive announcement, the independent central bank started to be more explicit, thus more transparent. Well, here we show a graphic. The graphic is evolution of central bank independence. Is a degree of independence during the 1970 to 1999. And we can see a line across the graphic. This means that the countries are below this line. It experimented a decrease of independent evolution. The countries are on the line. They didn't experiment of any kind of evolution. And the countries are above the line. They experimented some kind of evolution. The countries are more on the left. They experimented a higher evolution than the countries are more on the right. And this kind of evolution is associated with introducing a numerical goal for the monetary policy. This numerical goal is important for the transparency policy and for the institutions. Well, there are documents realized at least of 90s. It's a survey of 94 central bank, and it reveals an important issues. The first one is with 84% is to have an independent central bank. The second one with 83% is to maintain low inflation, and in the third position with 74% is to have a transparency central bank. That is evidence that the transparency has become a key feature of monetary policy. Well, one explanation of the transparency could be a necessary complement for the independent central bank. Some degree of openness is required to enable the accountability and to safeguard the democratic legitimacy of independent central bank. In economic and finance, when we talk the transparency, we consider that the information is either symmetric or asymmetric. To understand the economic effects of transparency, it is helpful to distinguish two types of effect. The first one is the unsettling effect. It's like a lack of transparency, and it means when the information is known for all the agents in the market. The second one is the incentive effect. It means when some agents have a lot of information and they use it to manipulate the market for their own benefit. Well, here we have 5 aspects of transparency. It depends in the context we are. Nowadays, in our research, we are focused on the first one, the political transparency, and another 4 are economic, procedural, policy, and operational. Well, I said before, the aim of the research is to introduce the fiscal policy in the current context, and we want to compare both models. The first one is only have a monetary policy, and another is monetary policy with the fiscal policy. To show how we do this comparison, let me explain the main equations of this model. The first one is the monetary policy. In this case, we have only two agents, the private agent and the central bank, and the main equations are the output is the difference between the inflation and the expected inflation. The second one is the loss function of the central bank. In this case, the central bank want to stabilization the inflation and the output, and the aim of the central bank is they don't want to have any deviation for their target, the target of the central bank and the target for the output. And well, if the central bank wants to take more care about the inflation, the weight of delta are lower if the central bank wants to take more care about the output. In other words, if the central bank wants to be more conservative, the weight of delta are lower if the central bank wants to be more liberal. Now, in this point, enter the private agent. The private agent doesn't know what is the target of the central bank. This target is only known for the central bank. To solve this equation, the agent introduced a signal. A signal is given from the central bank into the market, and if the signal is completely accurate, A is equal 1, we are in a perfect transparency. And if the signal is completely inaccurate, A is equal 0, we are on perfect openness. And when we solve this game, we have the equilibrium outcome and the inflation rate and the output growth. Well, the second model is when we introduce the fiscal policy. In this case, we have three agents: private agent, the central bank, and we introduce the government. And the main equations are the output is the difference between inflation, expected inflation, and the taxes. Obviously, if we introduce the government, we introduce the public spending. The public spending is the taxes plus inflation. If the government wants to increase the public spending, increase the taxes. In contrast, the output decrease. In this model, the governments take care about the fiscal policy, and the central banks take care about the monetary policy. And well, we have the same loss function I said as like before, and now we introduce the loss function of the government. In this case, the government take care about the inflation, the output, and the public spending. And we solve this game equal the model I said before. At this moment, we are solving this extended framework, and we want to compare the funding with those obtained in the benchmark model. Thank you for attention.
Thank you, Oscar. Now, Antonio Sorio.
Oscar, let me just, I will make some questions. Oscar, in this model, how you are going to introduce transparency? How you plan to model transparency in this model?
Well, I think we have 5 models, and we are we now we working in the first one is when is open as the policy objective, and we are trying to focus on that and that model. Probably where I continue to research, probably we the next step is going to the economic probably, and we just only research about that.
No, I'm saying because transparency is a kind of abstract concept, something. And then how to put transparency in a mathematical model is a little bit maybe can be challenging. So I'm just kind of warning or just remarking for you to pay more attention to this. Another thing that is has been observed in the last couple of years is that central banks have been kind of pushing up the interest rates to kind of cool down the economy. On the other side, governments were increasing spending to kind of move or maintain the economy strong. So in a sense there was contradictory. So fiscal policy and monetary policy were not aligned. So they were kind of killing each other. So in the end none of them was kind of producing effects, at least in the beginning. So I don't know. Maybe it's interesting because since you have monetary policy and fiscal policy in your model, maybe you can address this topic. It's kind of also interesting at the moment.
Well, I know. I said when our research about that, we are just only find about monetary policy, but we think that in economic we have 2 types of policy: the fiscal policy and the monetary policy. If we would just only work in one way, we think that there are wrong outcomes because we introduced the fiscal policy, and now we are just looking what happens if we introduce this kind of policy in the current context.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks for your presentation, and good luck with your research.
Thank you, Oscar. Good presentation. Okay, thank you very much. Now next speaker is Javi Campos. Makes noise.
full screen. In the idea of
F11.
F11.
No, pantalla completa.
Oh, yeah.
F11. But there is a button, F11 in the top.
Top right,
Top right.
top right of the,
Something like that.
Yeah, but
on the 3 points there's options.
Yeah, the 3 points. Maybe.
Also the 3 points probably have an option. That one, the other ones, nearest to the T. No, in the screen.
No, these are
No, so,
the Explorer options. No.
no.
These ones.
yeah.
It doesn't say that.
That one.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Nektarios Aslanidis, and today I'm going to present the paper Cross-Country Dependence and Financial Integration in the last 150 years. So over the last century, international financial systems has experienced international shocks, and historical events have shaped international markets and economy worldwide. In our study, financial integration in our paper we study financial integration taking cross-country perspective over the period from 1870 to 2016. Also, we adopt a novel methodology of Chudik and Pez around 2015, and consistent under the cross-country dependence and heterogeneity across countries. So, financial integration is defined and measured in different ways in the literature. Here we can see the 3 more important papers of financial integration through years. So, in one of the most important papers, Oswald and Taylor proposed a U-shaped pattern of financial integration. So in their empirical work, they use nominal interest arbitrage, real interest convergence, and equity returns, and they argue for U-shaped pattern over time. You can see better in their figure, where we can see that during the period of gold standard, we have high financial integration, in 1914, and is as high as in the last period, the floating exchange rate period. While the financial integration during the interwar years and Bretton Woods periods is lower than the other 2 periods. So we can say that financial integration is described better with a U-shaped pattern over the last 2 centuries. In another research, Becker and Mehel proposed a different pattern of financial integration called as SOS-shaped pattern. So they propose a measure of equity market integration for 17 countries. Also, they formulate an international factor model with 2 factors, one global factor and one regional factor. The parent pattern of global financial market integration is nicely SOS-shaped in all countries. And in order to understand what is the SOS shape, we can see the countries they used in their paper. So we can see that financial integration in the first years, like here from 1870 until before 1950, we have a high financial integration, but we have a higher financial integration in the last period in all countries, especially after 1980. And in the middle period, we have very low financial integration, as you can see. So Beckert and Mechel called this pattern of financial integration as a SOS shape. The SOS shape is like this, is like the Nike shape, okay? So on the other hand, Volosovich, 2011, proposed a different shape of financial integration, and he called this as a J shape for financial integration. He used bond markets of 15 industrialized economies from the same period, more or less, 1875 to 2009. His methodology is based on principal component analysis, and he argued that financial market integration by the end of the 20th century was higher than the earlier period, and for this reason exhibiting a J-shaped trend, which is this one, where again we can see that in the gold standard period we have a middle level of financial integration as well as in the Bretton Woods period, while after 1980s we can see we have a rapidly increase of financial integration, and the lower period of financial integration remains until the interwar years. So these three papers describes better the three different opinions about how the financial integration is going through the years. Now, in our econometric methodology, we use a dynamic panel approach to estimate a heterogeneous coefficient model in panels with dependence across countries. The estimation method is the dynamic common correlated effect estimator and is designed by Tsudik and Bezaran 2015. Also, we test for a cross-country dependence, which is the basic measure of financial integration in our paper. So, the common correlated effect estimator works by mapping the model by cross-sectional averages of the dependent variable, here y, and the regressors in order to account for the common factors, where Ft is the vector of the common factors, and Ai is an individual fixed effect for country I, and EIT is an isogrammatic error term different across I and over time t. Especially we use the dynamic form of the common correlated effect model. So we can see here we have the dynamic form of this model, and the UIT are cross-sectional weakly dependent. Also, we use the Bezaran CD test, which is the process to measure the cross-country dependence in the periods we are going to study. So, the Bezaran CD test is a simple test where the rho ij, the rho ij is a pairwise correlation of the residuals, where the residuals are the UIT. Okay? So it's a correlation, a coefficient between country I and country Z. So now, in our empirical analysis, in order to investigate the financial integration in global markets, we use financial and economic variables. So we built panel datasets on long-term interest rates, real long interest rates, equities and bonds, and all this in 17 countries. Also, you use as explanatory or control variables the lag one form of the long-term nominal interest rates, the real long interest rates, equities, bonds, inflation, debt-to-GDP ratio, and equity dividend yield. So we use fiscal and monetary variables for this study. Now the same periods we study is from 1870 to 2016, and this period is split into 3 sub-periods. The first period is the first era of globalization, the second the Bretton Woods, and the last one is the floating exchange rates period. However, in order to avoid the noisy data from non-market periods, we don't take into account the wartime years, the First World War and the Second World War years, as well as the German hyperinflation period, which is from 1999 to 1923. Also, we use annual data for the following countries. We use, most of the countries are European countries, but as well we use data from Australia, Japan, USA, and Canada, countries out of the Europe. Here in table 1, we have the results for real long interest rates. We use it as a dependent variable. And we have the results in 3 different examined periods. As control variables, we use the lagged form of real long interest rate, inflation, and debt to GDP. And also we test for cross-country dependence in 3 different periods. Starting from the cross-country dependence, we can see that in the first period, the first era of globalization, we have financial cross-country dependence around 29%, and the cross-country dependence remain in the same level, more or less, around 23%, while it decreases in a very low level, only in 8%. So we have a higher and the high financial integration is coming from cross-country dependence in the first and the last estimation period, while the cross-country dependence in the Bretton Woods period is very low. Also, we can see that the lagged form of real long interest rate, as well as the inflation, is important, statistically important in the first and in the last period of the war period. In the second table, we use the long-term nominal interest rate. So in the first we have the real interest rate, now we have the nominal interest rates. So here we can see that the long-term nominal interest rate in the lag 1 form remains statistically significant in the war period. While again the inflation is significant only in the first and in the last period. But here the cross-country dependence remains very low in the first era of globalization and the Bretton Woods period, while it reaches a peak, a high cross-country dependence in the last period, around 55%. So we have a very low cross-country dependence in the first periods and a very high cross-country dependence in the last period. Again, by using nominal interest rates. Now we use the bond market. Again, here we use the same control variables and we test the cross-country dependence. And again, we can see that cross-country dependence is very low in the first 2 periods, but increases around 35% in the last period. So in this case, we have again higher financial integration, which is coming from cross-country dependence, in the last period, in the floating exchange rates period. The last is the equity market. So here we use as a control variables the equity lag and inflation. But here we have a difference because we use the equity dividend yield instead of debt to GDP ratio. Here we can see that financial integration or cross-country dependence is around 25% in the first period. So it's in the middle or is closer to a high level of financial integration. And it increases to around 33% in the last period, but it stays low in the Bretton Woods period. Some difference we can see here is that the equity dividend yield was very significant, statistically significant in the Bretton Woods period, while in the two other periods is no statistical and so statistically significant. An illustrated perspective of our results of cross-country dependence we can see here better. So we can see that for real interest rates here we have a cross-country dependence in the first period around 30%, and then decreases in the Bretton Woods period and increases again in the floating period. So we can say that this shape is like the EU-shape pattern of Obstfeld and Taylor, while in the next two variables of long-term nominal interest rates and the bond market, we have a different shape pattern that describes the cross-country dependence and as a result in financial integration. So here the J-shaped pattern of Volosovich is described better at these two markets. Finally, the equity market here is described better by the SOS-shaped pattern of Beckert and Merrill. So you can see we have a high or mid-level financial integration in the first period, but we have higher financial integration in the last period. So, as you can see, we have different shapes for financial integration by using different markets like bond market or equity market. So, we can say that there is no way of to describe how financial integration evolution was during the years. It depends on the market we study. So in the last part of the paper, sorry, we study the fine ensemble properties of our model by Monte Carlo simulations. The parameter values for the data generating process are as in Desember 2018, but using a small sample of sizes with n to be 10, 15, and 20, and the time be from 20 to 40. So we test, in this way, we test the performance on the proposed methodology to those sample sizes, which is used in our umbilical analysis. So the number of simulation is set to 500, but the results are found to be stable over 500. Here in the table, we can see that we use the bias and the root mean squares. For phi is the coefficient of our model. Is the coefficient of our model, while beta is the coefficient for the regressors. So beta are the coefficients of regressors. And we can see that as as the time series observations increases from 20 to 40, the results of Monte Carlo simulation decreases over time, here, everywhere. So in absolute values here. So we can say that our results are in line with Desember in 2018, and we can say that our model performs very well in smaller samples than in bigger samples that the model is designed to work. Okay. Now, to conclude, by using long-term interest rates and bonds, our analysis reveals a significantly J-shaped increase in financial integration after Bretton Woods, such as documented in Volosovich. While examining real interest rates, our study collaborates with the earlier literature proportion of the U-shaped trend pattern in international financial markets. Also for equity market, we confirm the SOS-shaped pattern in financial integration, which is in line with Bakker and Mehl. And in general, we argue that financial integration is increasing after the Bretton Woods period. So, as for the future research, we aim to investigate some financial crises and their international transmission mechanism across the countries. So, this is all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now, Bernd Eglen, please. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. I think it's very interesting paper that you are doing. And I have some comments. So some comments are more for the paper and others apply to the paper and the presentation. So the first thing for me, what I think you should improve is the use of the definition of the variables.
Sorry,
so in the paper, sometimes you talk about long-term interest rate and real interest rate.
Yeah.
And then you say nominal and real long-term interest rate. So for me, it took quite a while to see what is really the variable that you are using. So now I understood also that you use always long-term interest rate, and then you distinguish between real and nominal. Is this right?
Yes, we use in both sides. We use long-term interest rates, okay. The real and the nominal long-term real interest.
For me, sometimes when you say long-term interest rate,
maybe sometimes not
and
so.
Then interest rate, I thought might be short-term interest rate.
Okay.
Long-term versus short-term, and I thought they were both measured in real terms, and not one in real and in nominal. And so it was very confusing. And I think what you need is a better data description. You have to say clearly what is the measurement of your variables. Even if you say long-term interest rate, you do never know really what is long-term. So it's not defined. So what is long-term? Is this 12 months? I don't know.
No, it's 1 year long-term interest rate. No, 1 month or 3 months short-term interest rates.
Yeah, but it's not defined.
Yeah.
So you never know this. The same applies to equity. So you talk about equity, but you never know how this is measured. So this is some kind of average return on equity per country, or what is this?
Yeah, it's the annual data of equity for each country. So
what is equity?
Sorry?
How is it measured?
It's an average for the stocks in general. The stocks for
the stock market indicator.
Yes.
Okay. You should define. I mean, it's not clear for the
so
reader.
I didn't calculate some average or something. It's already annual data. I used from database.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, I know. Yeah. But you should define it.
To define it.
So that the reader knows what is the definition of this. How is this measured in the data? Because it's not clear. And the same is for bonds. I think it's
government bonds. Yeah.
10-year, right?
Yeah.
But it's not defined anyway. So it's the years of government bonds, and so on. And then the database you should also cite it. So that you mention it in the paper but not in the literature. So also, and you should put descriptive statistics on this data.
Sorry?
The descriptive statistics of this data, so what is minimum, maximum,
Okay.
what's the average, some kind of variance. So all this would be useful. Once you define it, then you can always use the same notation in the paper so that it becomes clear. Right? So that's the first comment. The second comment is, for me, the definition of the U-shaped, J-shaped, swash-shaped pattern seems to be a bit arbitrary, in fact. So now we try to explain it a bit more. So what really defines these patterns, right? I will also come to your table later. For me, it looks more like there's a tendency towards more financial integration, and then you have two clear structural breaks, World War I and II. And that's the graph you see at Oxford, and it's also the graph you see with the J-shaped. I mean, it's really like, they seem very similar, and they give a different definition to it, but for me they seem quite similar. And,
yes,
there's a tendency, and then there's a structural break, and that's it. And there's not much more about it. Right? And then I guess you want to define these shapes, but still what you should do, you show that the parameters are different from 0, but you should show that they are different between each other, that they're significantly different. So in the figure that you have, you should put the confidence intervals. And then you will see probably that in the first sub-figure on the upper, on the left upper and the lower right, you cannot, they are both U-shaped. So you will probably not find a difference between the left bar and the right bar in the upper left panel and the lower right panel. So you say this one is U-shaped and the other one is swash-shaped.
This one?
No, the other diagonal.
This one?
Yeah, they look close U-shaped one.
Yeah, it's similar to U-shaped.
The other one also.
This one?
Yeah, and you say this is swash-shaped. I think they are not different significantly. The left bar and the right bar, they might intersect the confidence intervals. You cannot say they are different.
Yeah, the difference.
And you say this is swash-shaped and the other is U-shaped.
Yeah, the difference is so very
So
big.
it seems to be somehow arbitrary. And I think they are also related. So that's
of course
the next
are related.
comment.
Yeah.
So the next comment is
It's different.
what is missing is the argument behind it. So what's the argument that explains these patterns in the financial integration, and why are these both two are related and the other two are also related in a different manner? So I think you should explain this. And another point is that what Oxford they do not distinguish really between three periods, right? The grouping data with different time period spans and then marking three periods somehow is also arbitrary, right?
So I cannot hear very well.
Yeah, so you have these three periods,
Yeah,
while in Oxford you have
a work period.
a work period. And of course, if you group these periods, somehow arbitrary, you say, okay, this is Bretton Woods, this is post-Bretton Woods, and this is the gold standard area. But why don't you use put a time span where you can see all this?
Yes, because we had a problem with data, because in economic history it's very difficult to find reliable data in all periods. So in the wartime periods and
No, but still for the data you have, these periods, you could analyze smaller sub-periods, right? 10-year periods, because you have some periods that are 40 years, others 20 years.
yes,
And
because
then you could say that there's less integration because the time span is lower. Somehow.
yeah, of course the period is different, but we wanted to see what happened in Bretton Woods period, in the
Yeah.
first era of globalization. The time is different in these periods, not the same. But okay, I can understand your point. Yeah.
I mean, you could exploit this more, right?
Yeah.
So that's my colleagues. But I like the paper much, and it was interesting to read. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We have one question.
Well, the paper was very interesting, the presentation, but I have a methodological doubt. Like in dynamic panel data models, you have two sets of errors. The one that is individual specific, and the other one is serial errors. The issue is that both of them are correlated, and the individual errors are also correlated with an underlying tendency. That even if you take first differences, you would say that if the past was positive, then probably the future will be positive also. So there are solutions to these correlations, and maybe this impacts the significance of the effects, that most of them are not significant. Maybe if you control for these correlations, you will have more interesting things.
Okay.
There are some papers that provide solutions to this.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Let's talk about it.
Thank you very much.